The silence of the first-class cabin was shattered not by turbulence, but by the sharp, stinging sound of a snap. Arthur Harrington stood over seat 1A, his face a mask of disdain, pointing a trembling finger at the woman sitting calmly with a glass of champagne. "I don't know who let you in here," he sneered, his voice dripping with entitlement, "but the help doesn't sit in first class. Get up before I have security drag you out." He thought he was asserting dominance. He thought he was cleaning up the cabin. He had no idea he was speaking to the woman who owned the plane, and by the time they landed, he would wish he had never boarded at all. The air inside the exclusive lounge at JFK International Airport was always kept at a crisp 68 degrees, a temperature designed to keep the tailored wool suits of business tycoons and the silk blouses of Harrises perfectly comfortable. It was a world of hushed tones, the clinking of crystal, and the scent of expensive bergamot. Arthur Harrington adjusted his tie in the reflection of the automatic glass doors as he entered. He was a man who wore his wealth like armor, a bespoke suit from Savile Row, a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than most people's homes, and an expression of perpetual dissatisfaction. Arthur was the CEO of Harrington Logistics, a shipping empire he had inherited from his father and ruthlessly expanded. He was used to people moving out of his way. In fact, he required it. He walked to the concierge desk, bypassing the short line of two other passengers. He slammed his platinum card on the marble counter. "The flight to London," Arthur barked, not bothering to look the receptionist in the eye. "I was told there's a delay with the catering truck. I have a meeting in the city at 9 tomorrow. If we are late, I will personally sue this airline into bankruptcy." The receptionist, a young woman named Sophie, forced a polite smile. "Mr. Harrington, welcome back. I apologize for the slight delay. We are boarding first class in 10 minutes. Can I get you a pre-flight scotch?" "I don't want a drink. I want competence," Arthur snapped, taking his boarding pass. "And make sure the seat next to me is empty. I have work to do, and I don't want to be elbowed by some tourist who used miles to upgrade." "The first-class cabin is fully booked today, sir," Sophie said apologetically. "However, the seats in the new A380 suite configuration offer complete privacy." Arthur grunted, snatched his pass, and stormed toward the buffet, grabbing a handful of almonds with an aggressive swipe. He checked his phone. His stock was down 2 points. His mood darkened further. Today was not the day to test him. 30 minutes later, Arthur was the first to push past the gate agent when pre-boarding was announced. He walked down the jet bridge with the heavy, stomping gait of a man who believed the earth should tremble under his feet. He entered the aircraft, turning left into the sanctuary of the first-class cabin. It was magnificent. Soft ambient lighting in hues of calming violet, plush leather seats that converted into full beds, and the soft hum of the auxiliary power unit. It was his domain. He found his seat, 1A, the prime spot. But as he approached, he stopped dead in his tracks. His overhead bin, the one directly above 1A, was already closed. And inside his suite, sitting in his seat, was a woman. She was black, with dark, radiant skin and hair styled in intricate, elegant braids that fell over her shoulder. She wore a cream-colored cashmere sweater that looked deceptively simple but whispered of high fashion, and dark trousers. She was reading a thick document on a tablet, a pair of gold-rimmed glasses perched on her nose. A glass of vintage Krug champagne sat on the console next to her. Arthur stared. His brain tried to categorize her. She didn't look like the usual wives of diplomats or the pop stars he sometimes tolerated in this cabin. She looked comfortable. Too comfortable. He checked his boarding pass. 1A. He looked at the seat number on the suite wall. 1A. Arthur felt the heat rise up the back of his neck. It was a mix of confusion and an ugly, simmering rage that was always just beneath his surface. He didn't just see a person in his seat. He saw an error, a glitch in the matrix of his privileged life. He didn't say, "Excuse me." He didn't check his ticket again. He simply stepped into the entrance of the suite and cleared his throat loudly, a sound like a chainsaw ripping through the quiet cabin. The woman didn't look up. She swiped a page on her tablet, her eyes scanning the text with intensity. Arthur's jaw tightened. He tapped his knuckles hard on the privacy partition. Rap, rap, rap. Finally, the woman looked up. Her eyes were dark brown, calm, and utterly unimpressed. She removed her glasses slowly, folding them and placing them on the table. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was low, with a transatlantic accent that was hard to place, vaguely British, but with a lilt of something else, perhaps West African. "You're in my seat," Arthur stated, holding up his boarding pass. The woman glanced at the pass, then back at his face. "I don't think so," she said simply. "I'm seated in 1A. Perhaps you're in 1K? Across the aisle?" Arthur scoffed, a short, sharp sound. "I know where I sit. I fly this route twice a month. I always sit in 1A. Now, I don't know what kind of mix-up the gate agents made, letting you wander in here while the cleaning crew was finishing up, but you need to move. Now." The woman's expression didn't change, but a slight chill entered her eyes. "I am not wandering. I am a passenger, and I am sitting in the seat assigned to me." "Assigned?" Arthur laughed, a cruel, incredulous sound. He looked around the cabin, seeking an audience, but the other passengers were just settling in. "Look, honey, I don't know who you slept with or whose miles you stole to get a taste of the high life, but this is a business cabin. Real business. I have work to do, so why don't you gather your little things and head back to row 40 where you fit in?" The silence that followed was heavy. The woman picked up her champagne, took a slow sip, and set it down. "Mr. Harrington." "Arthur Harrington," he announced, as if waiting for applause. "Mr. Harrington," she said, "I suggest you check your ticket again, or perhaps speak to a flight attendant. But do not speak to me in that tone again." Arthur's face turned a shade of crimson. He wasn't used to being told what to do, certainly not by women, and definitely not by women who looked like her. He reached up and pressed the call button, mashing it repeatedly. "We'll see about that," he hissed. A flight attendant appeared almost instantly. Her name tag read Sarah. She was a veteran of the airline, with 15 years of experience dealing with nervous flyers, drunk vacationers, and the occasional diva. But as she approached row 1, she could feel the tension radiating off Arthur Harrington like heat from a pavement. "Is there a problem, Mr. Harrington?" Sarah asked, keeping her voice even and professional. She knew Arthur. The whole crew knew Arthur. He was on the handle with caution list in the pre-flight briefing. "Yes, there is a problem," Arthur spat, pointing a finger at the woman in the seat. "This person is in my seat. I have 1A. She is refusing to move. I want her removed from the aircraft for theft of services and aggressive behavior." Sarah blinked. She looked at the woman in the seat, who had returned to reading her tablet, seemingly unbothered by the man towering over her. Sarah recognized the woman instantly. Her heart did a small flip in her chest. "Mr. Harrington," Sarah said, lowering her voice. "May I see your boarding pass, please?" Arthur shoved it into her hand. 1A. "See? 1A. Sarah looked at the pass. Then she looked at the manifest on her handheld device. She took a deep breath. "Mr. Harrington, there seems to be a misunderstanding. Your boarding pass says 1A, yes, but there was a last-minute equipment change and seat reassignment. The system should have alerted you at the gate. You are seated in 2A, just behind this suite." Arthur looked as if she had slapped him. 2A? "I don't sit in row 2. I sit in row 1. Always." "I apologize, sir," Sarah said soothingly, "but this seat is occupied." "By whom?" Arthur demanded, his voice rising. "Who is more important than a Diamond Medallion member? I spend $500,000 a year with this airline. Who is she? Some rapper? A lottery winner?" The woman in 1A sighed. It was a sound of profound exhaustion. She turned her head to look at Sarah. "Sarah, isn't it?" "Yes, ma'am," Sarah said, standing a little straighter. "Could you please explain to this gentleman that he is disturbing the peace of the cabin? I have a very long flight ahead of me, and I would prefer not to spend it being insulted." Arthur exploded. "Insulted? You're the one stealing my seat. I bet you don't even have a ticket. I bet you sneaked on during pre-boarding." He turned to Sarah. "Check her ticket, right now. I want to see it." "Sir, that isn't necessary," Sarah began. "It is necessary," Arthur shouted. Heads were turning now. A man in 1K lowered his noise-canceling headphones. A couple in row 3 stood up to see what was happening. "I want to see proof that she belongs here, because looking at her, she clearly doesn't. Look at her clothes. That's probably a knockoff sweater. She's probably a cleaner who got comfortable." The racism was no longer a subtext, it was a bludgeon. The air in the cabin turned frigid. The woman in 1A slowly stood up. She was tall, taller than Arthur expected. She stood eye to level with him. Her face was composed, but her eyes were hard as flint. "My name," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent cabin, "is Dr. Noel Kalu. And I do not need to show you my ticket, Mr. Harrington, because I do not need a ticket to be on this plane." Arthur laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Did you hear that, Sarah? She admits it. No ticket. She's a stowaway. Call the police. Get the federal marshals. I want her arrested." "Dr. Kalu is not a stowaway, sir," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly with anger now. "Please, take your seat in 2A. We are delaying departure." "I am not sitting in 2A, Arthur roared. He stepped closer to Noelle, invading her personal space. "I am sitting in 1A, and you are going to get your trashy little bag and get off my flight." He reached out and grabbed the strap of Noelle's leather bag, which was resting on the ottoman. He yanked it, attempting to throw it into the aisle. "Don't touch my property," Noelle said. Her hand shot out, catching his wrist with surprising strength. She didn't squeeze, just held it firm. "Let go." "Assault!" Arthur screamed, wrenching his arm back. "She assaulted me." "Did you see that? Sarah, she attacked me." He turned to the other passengers. "You all saw it. This aggressive woman attacked me. I am the victim here." Sarah pressed the call button on her handset, the code for immediate assistance from the cockpit. "Captain, we have a disturbance in first class. Level 2 threat." Arthur straightened his jacket, a smug smile playing on his lips. "That's right. Call the captain. Get the pilot back here. He'll understand. He's a rational man. He won't let some affirmative action hire hijack his plane." Noelle sat back down. She smoothed the front of her trousers. She looked at Arthur with a mixture of pity and boredom. "You really have no idea what you've just done, do you?" "I've just reclaimed my seat," Arthur said, puffing out his chest. "And I've exposed a fraud." The heavy curtain at the front of the cabin whipped open. The cockpit door had opened. Captain James Anderson stepped into the cabin with the kind of presence that usually calmed nerves during a storm. He was a man in his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair cut with military precision and 4 gold stripes on his epaulettes gleaming under the cabin lights. He had flown for the Air Force before joining the commercial airline 30 years ago. He had seen engines fail, landing gears jam, and storms that turned the sky black. But as he looked at the scene in row 1, he knew this was a different kind of turbulence. Arthur Harrington smiled as the captain approached. It was a conspiratorial smile, the kind one man gives another when they believe they share a secret understanding of how the world works. Arthur adjusted his cufflinks, feeling the adrenaline of righteousness coursing through him. "Captain," Arthur said, his voice booming with false camaraderie. "Thank God you're here. We have a serious security breach. This woman," he gestured dismissively at Dr. Noel Kalu, who remained seated, "has refused to vacate my seat. She has no ticket. She assaulted me when I tried to help her move her bags, and frankly, she's belligerent. I want her removed. I want the police waiting at the jet bridge." Captain Anderson didn't smile. He didn't even look at Arthur initially. His eyes scanned the environment, the spilled drops of champagne on the console from when Arthur had bumped the table, the distressed look on Sarah's face, and finally, the calm, almost statuesque figure of the woman in seat 1A. "Sir," Captain Anderson said, his voice a low, gravelly baritone, "I need you to lower your voice. You are shouting in a confined space." "I am shouting because I am angry," Arthur retorted, though he lowered his volume a fraction. "I am a Diamond Medallion member. I am the CEO of Harrington Logistics. Do you know how much cargo I ship with your airline's partners? Millions. And I come on board expecting the luxury I paid for, only to find this." He pointed a finger at Noelle again. "She doesn't belong here, Captain. Look at her. She's probably some cleaning lady who decided to play pretend. It's a security risk. If she can sneak in here, who else can? Terrorists? This is on you, Captain. You are responsible for the safety of this vessel." Noelle turned a page on her tablet. The sound was incredibly loud in the silence. Arthur's face twitched. "See? She's ignoring us. The arrogance! Tell her to get up." Captain Anderson finally turned his full attention to Arthur. He stepped closer, his height eclipsing Arthur's. "Mr. Harrington, is it?" "Yes. Arthur Harrington." Mr. Harrington, the flight attendant, Sarah, informs me that you are assigned to seat 2A. Is that correct? Arthur sputtered. That's a computer error. I always sit in 1A. This woman stole it. And even if the computer says 2A, surely you have the authority to fix it. Move her to coach. Or kick her off. I don't care. Just get her out of my sight. Why? Captain Anderson asked calmly. Why? Arthur blinked, confused by the question. Because she's… Look, let's be real, Captain. We're men of the world. First class is for a certain caliber of person. It's for the captains of industry. It's for people who built this country. It's not for affirmative action cases. It disrupts the atmosphere. It lowers the property value, so to speak. A collective gasp went through the cabin. A woman in row 3 covered her mouth. The racism was naked now, stripped of any polite euphemism. Arthur felt he was on safe ground. He assumed the captain, an older white man, privately agreed with him, but was too bound by HR policies to say it. Arthur thought he was being the voice of the silent majority. He was wrong. Captain Anderson's face hardened into stone. The professional mask slipped just enough to reveal a flash of intense, cold anger. Mr. Harrington, the captain said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. You are disrupting my flight. You have insulted a passenger. You have grabbed a passenger. And now you are spewing hate speech in my cabin. Hate speech? Arthur scoffed. It's called reality. Now, are you going to do your job? Or do I have to call the CEO of this airline myself? Arthur pulled out his phone. I have the number of the Customer Relations VP saved. I'll make one call, Captain, and you'll be flying cargo planes to Anchorage for the rest of your career. I suggest you make the right choice. Move. Her. Arthur crossed his arms, triumph gleaming in his eyes. He had played his ace card. He had threatened the captain's livelihood. He waited for the inevitable capitulation, for the captain to turn to the woman and order her out. Captain Anderson took a deep breath. He looked at Arthur with an expression that wasn't fear, it was pity. Then, he turned his back on Arthur completely. He faced the woman in seat 1A. He removed his cap, tucking it under his arm. He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of profound respect that shocked everyone watching. Madame, the captain said softly, I apologize profusely for this disturbance. I was not aware you were joining us on this leg until I saw the updated manifest moments ago. We are honored to have you aboard. Arthur froze. His brain couldn't process the visual data. The captain was bowing? To her? Thank you, Captain Anderson, Noelle said, finally placing her tablet down on the console. She removed her glasses and looked up, her expression softening into a tired smile. It's good to see you again, James. How is your wife? Did she recover from her hip surgery? She did, thank you for asking, the captain replied warmly. She's back in the garden. Good, Noelle said. She gestured toward Arthur with a languid wave of her hand. I'm afraid this gentleman is having a difficult time understanding the concept of assigned seating, and he seems to be under the impression that he owns the airline. Arthur's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. You know him? Captain Anderson turned back to Arthur. The warmth was gone, replaced by ice. Mr. Harrington, the captain said, you asked to speak to the owner. You threatened to call the leadership of this airline. Yes, and I will. Arthur stammered, though his confidence was beginning to fracture. You don't need to make a call, the captain said. He gestured to Noelle. You are currently screaming at Dr. Noelle Kalu. She is the founder and CEO of Kalu Enterprises. Arthur frowned. So? Some tech company? What does that matter? Kalu Enterprises, the captain continued, enunciating every syllable, is the parent company of Meridian Holdings. Arthur stared blankly. And Meridian Holdings, the captain finished, owns this airline. The silence in the cabin was absolute. It was a vacuum, sucking the air out of Arthur Harrington's lungs. The words bounced around his skull. Meridian Holdings owns the airline. He looked at the woman, Dr. Noelle Kalu. He looked at her simple sweater, which he had called a knockoff. He looked at her braids, which he had sneered at. And suddenly, he saw them differently. He didn't see the help. He saw power. The kind of quiet, understated power that didn't need to shout because it controlled the very ground everyone else stood on. That's impossible, Arthur whispered. The owner is I thought the owner was that guy. What's his name? Reckless, Branson, or some investment group? Dr. Kalu acquired the majority stake in the airline 4 months ago, Captain Anderson said. Enjoying every second of this. She saved us from bankruptcy. She saved my pension. She saved Sarah's job. And she personally redesigned these first-class suites you are so desperate to sit in. Arthur felt the blood drain from his face, leaving him pasty and gray. He looked at Noelle. She was watching him with a look of clinical curiosity, as if he were a bacteria sample under a microscope. You, Arthur started, his voice cracking. He cleared his throat, trying to salvage some shred of dignity. He was a CEO, too. He could pivot. He could negotiate. Dr. Kalu, I had no idea. That much is obvious, Noelle said coolly. Arthur forced a laugh. It sounded like dry leaves crunching. Well, this is embarrassing. A misunderstanding, really. Two captains of industry, bumping heads. You know how it is, the stress of the boardroom. He extended a hand toward her, a desperate olive branch. Arthur Harrington. Harrington Logistics. We actually handle some of the supply chain for your in-flight meals, I believe. Small world. Noelle did not take his hand. She looked at it until Arthur, humiliated, slowly lowered it. It is not a misunderstanding, Mr. Harrington, Noelle said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of a judge's gavel. You did not mistake me for the owner. You mistook me for someone beneath you. You saw a black woman in a first-class seat and your mind immediately went to thief, cleaner, stowaway. You insulted my appearance. You assaulted me by grabbing my bag. And you tried to weaponize the captain against me. Now, wait a minute, Arthur said, sweating profusely now. I was just vigilant. Security is important to all of us. I didn't know who you were. If I were a white man in a suit, sitting in this seat, would you have asked to see my ticket? Noelle asked. Arthur opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He knew the answer. Everyone knew the answer. I demand my seat, Arthur deflected, his panic turning back into aggression. I paid full fare. Regardless of who you are, I am a paying customer. The customer is always right. Noelle picked up her glass of champagne. She took a sip, savoring it. Actually, Mr. Harrington, the customer is right only when they abide by the terms of carriage. And you have violated several of them in the last 10 minutes. Abuse of staff. Abuse of passengers. Creating a hostile environment. She turned to the captain. Captain Anderson, does this aircraft belong to me? Yes, madame. And do I have the right to refuse service to anyone who threatens the safety or comfort of my crew and passengers? Absolutely, madame. Under federal aviation regulations and company policy, the captain has the final say. And if the owner concurs, there is no debate. Noelle turned her eyes back to Arthur. Mr. Harrington, I don't want your money. I don't want your business. And I certainly don't want you on my plane. Arthur's eyes widened. You can't kick me off. I have a meeting in London. Millions of dollars are at stake. I suggest you find a charter, Noelle said. Though, given your behavior, I doubt anyone will want to fly you. You can't do this, Arthur shouted, his face purple. Do you know who I am? I will sue you. I will sue this entire airline. I will tell the press. Tell them, Noelle said, bored. Tell them Arthur Harrington was removed from a flight for being a racist bully. See how that affects your stock price. She looked at the captain. Captain Anderson, please remove this man from my aircraft and ensure his luggage is offloaded. I don't want his toxicity in the cargo hold either. With pleasure, madam, Captain Anderson said. He reached for his radio. Ground ops, this is Flight 104. We need Port Authority police at the gate immediately. We have a disruptive passenger refusing to deplane. Police? Arthur shrieked. You're calling the cops on me? You assaulted a passenger, sir, Sarah interjected, stepping forward. Her fear was gone, replaced by a fierce loyalty to her boss. I saw you grab her arm. I saw you grab her bag. That's battery. I barely touched her. Get out, Noelle said. It was a command. Get off my plane. Arthur looked around the cabin. He looked for an ally. He looked at the man in 1K. The man gave him a thumbs down. He looked at the couple in row 3. They were filming him with their phones. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He wasn't the hero of this story. He wasn't the powerful executive asserting order. He was the villain. And he was being recorded. "This isn't over," Arthur snarled, gathering his briefcase. "You'll hear from my lawyers. All of you. I have a team of 60 lawyers on retainer, Mr. Harrington," Noelle said, returning her gaze to her tablet. "They are very bored. They will enjoy eating you alive." Arthur turned to storm out, but the jet bridge was already blocked. 2 Port Authority officers were standing there, their faces grim. "Mr. Harrington?" one of the officers asked. She started it. Arthur pointed a shaking finger back at Noelle. "Sir, grab your bag and come with us." "Now," the officer ordered. Arthur was escorted out, flanked by the police, sputtering threats that grew quieter as he was marched down the aisle. Past the economy, passengers who craned their necks to see the rich man being perp walked off the plane. As he disappeared into the jet bridge, the first-class cabin remained silent for a moment. Then, the man in 1K started to clap. Then the couple in row 3. Soon, the whole cabin was applauding. Noelle didn't smile. She just closed her eyes for a moment, letting out a long breath. Sarah approached her seat. "Dr. Kalu, can I get you anything? A fresh glass? Some water?" Noelle opened her eyes. "Thank you, Sarah. A water would be fine." "I am so sorry about that," Sarah whispered. "It's not your fault, Sarah," Noelle said softly. "Money can buy a first-class ticket, but it cannot buy class, and it certainly cannot buy character." Sarah nodded and went to the galley. The plane door was closed. The engines began to spool up. The problem had been removed. But for Arthur Harrington, the nightmare was just beginning. He thought being kicked off the plane was the punishment. He was wrong. The real karma was waiting for him inside the terminal, and it was going to hit him harder than a runway impact. The interrogation room at JFK's Port Authority precinct was a stark contrast to the plush, violet-lit sanctuary of the first-class cabin Arthur Harrington had just been ejected from. The walls were painted a color that could only be described as institutional despair, a peeling beige that smelled faintly of Ammo Noel and stale coffee. Arthur sat on a metal chair that was bolted to the floor. His expensive suit jacket was folded neatly on the table, but his shirt was damp with sweat, sticking uncomfortably to his back. He was no longer the master of the universe. He was a suspect. "This is absolutely ridiculous," Arthur muttered, checking his Patek Philippe watch for the 10th time in 2 minutes. "I am a victim of theft. I am a victim of assault. And I am being held here like a common criminal." Officer Miller, a burly man who looked like he had seen everything and was impressed by none of it, didn't look up from his paperwork. "You're not under arrest, Mr. Harrington. Yet, we are just processing the incident report. The airline has filed a formal complaint for interference with a flight crew. That's a federal offense. You're lucky they aren't pressing assault charges." "Yet? Assault?" Arthur laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. "I touched her bag. I wanted her to move. It was a misunderstanding. As soon as I speak to my lawyer, this will all disappear. In fact, I'm going to sue the department for false imprisonment." "You do that," Miller said, finally looking up. "But before you call your lawyer, you might want to check your phone. It's been buzzing off the hook since we brought you in." Arthur grabbed his phone from the table. He had ignored it during the walk from the plane, too focused on shouting at the officers. Now, he unlocked the screen. He had 47 missed calls, 112 text messages, and his Twitter, X, notifications were simply a blur of scrolling numbers, moving so fast he couldn't read them. He opened his messages first. The top one was from Bennett, his chief legal officer at Harrington Logistics. "Bennett, Arthur, what the hell happened? It's everywhere. Call me immediately. Do not speak to the police." Arthur frowned. "Everywhere?" What was everywhere? He opened the news app. He didn't have to search. It was the top story. Breaking. CEO of Harrington Logistics ejected from plane after racist tirade against billionaire airline owner. Arthur's stomach dropped. It felt as if the floor had dissolved beneath him. He clicked the link. There was a video. It was clear, high definition, shot from row 3. It showed everything. It showed him pointing his finger. It showed him sneering about the help. It showed him grabbing Noelle's bag. But the audio was the nail in the coffin. First class is for a certain caliber of person. It's not for affirmative action cases. It lowers the property value. Arthur watched himself on the tiny screen. He looked deranged. He looked hateful. And opposite him, Dr. Noelle Kalu looked like a queen dealing with an unruly peasant. The contrast was devastating. The video had 4.2 million views. It had been posted 40 minutes ago. "Oh my God," Arthur whispered. His phone rang again. It was Sir Reginald Sterling's executive assistant in London, the meeting he was flying to attend, the merger that was going to save his fiscal year. Arthur answered, his voice trembling. "Hello? Look, tell Reginald I'm going to be a bit delayed. There was a—" "Mr. Harrington," the assistant cut him off. Her voice was ice cold. "Sir Reginald has seen the video. We all have." "It's taken out of context," Arthur lied desperately. "That woman provoked me. That woman," the assistant interrupted again, "is Dr. Noelle Kalu. Sir Reginald sits on the board of a charity with her. He considers her a close personal friend. He is absolutely appalled. The meeting is cancelled, Mr. Harrington. And Harrington Logistics is hereby removed from our list of approved vendors. Do not contact this office again." The line went dead. Arthur stared at the phone. That contract was worth $40 million, gone. In 10 seconds. He stood up, pacing the small room. No, this can be fixed. This is just a PR blip. I'll issue an apology. I'll say I was on medication. I'll say I was exhausted. People forget. The news cycle moves fast." He dialed Bennett. "Bennett, you saw it?" "Saw it?" Bennett's voice was ragged. "Arthur, I'm watching it on CNN right now. Anderson Cooper is breaking down the legal implications. They have a lip reader analyzing your whispers." "Spin it," Arthur commanded, trying to find his CEO voice. "Draft a statement. Say I have a condition. Low blood sugar. Something." "Arthur, listen to me," Bennett said. "I can't spin this. The board has called an emergency meeting. They're convening in 1 hour. They want you on a secure line." "The board?" Arthur stopped pacing. "I control the board. I picked half of them." "Not anymore," Bennett said. "The stock is in freefall. We've lost 8% in the last hour. The algorithmic traders picked up the sentiment analysis from social media and dumped our shares. We are bleeding out, Arthur. And the hashtag number boycott Harrington is the #1 trend globally, higher than the Super Bowl." Arthur slumped back into the metal chair. The reality of the modern world was crashing down on him. In the old days, a man like him could yell at a waiter or a stewardess, and it would disappear into the ether. Maybe a complaint letter would be filed, and his secretary would send a fruit basket. But this was the digital age. And he had picked a fight with a woman who didn't just have money. She had the moral high ground and the internet on her side. "What do I do?" Arthur asked, his voice small. "Get out of the airport," Bennett said. "Don't talk to anyone. Cover your face. The press is already camping out at the arrivals hall. I've sent a private car to the back exit of the police precinct. Go home. Lock the door. And pray." Officer Miller knocked on the table. "You're free to go, Mr. Harrington, but we're keeping the flight manifest and the video as evidence. The FBI might want to chat later regarding the Aviation Security Act." Arthur grabbed his jacket. He didn't put it on. He just clutched it like a security blanket. He walked out of the interrogation room, down a long corridor, and pushed open the heavy steel door to the back-loading dock. The cool night air hit him. He thought he was safe. He thought he had avoided the cameras. He was wrong. As he stepped toward the black sedan waiting for him, a flashbulb popped. Then another. Then 100. A swarm of paparazzi and freelance journalists had bribed the parking attendants to find out where he would be released. They surged forward like a wave. "Mr. Harrington, do you hate black women? Arthur, is it true you're resigning? Mr. Harrington, look this way, give us that sneer. Did you know she owned the plane?" Microphones were shoved in his face. He tried to shield his eyes. He stumbled, tripping over a curb, and fell onto the dirty concrete. Click, click, click. The photo of Arthur Harrington, billionaire CEO, scrambling on his hands and knees on the pavement, his face twisted in fear and rage, would be on the cover of the New York Post the next morning. The headline would read, "Grounded." The penthouse apartment on Park Avenue usually felt like a fortress. It was soundproofed, climate-controlled, and severed from the grit of the city below. But for the last 48 hours, it had felt like a prison cell. Arthur sat in his study, the curtains drawn. He hadn't shaved. He was wearing the same sweatpants he had put on 2 days ago. Empty scotch bottles cluttered the desk. The television was on, muted. Every channel was discussing him. They were interviewing psychologists about entitlement, rage. They were interviewing former employees of Harrington Logistics who were coming out of the woodwork to share stories of his bullying. He had become the main character of the world, and the world hated him. The door to the study opened. It was his wife, Veronica. Veronica was a woman who had tolerated Arthur's temper and infidelities for 20 years because she enjoyed the lifestyle. She was pragmatic. But she also had a limit. She was dressed in a travel suit, carrying a Louis Vuitton weekender bag. "Veronica?" Arthur croaked. "Where are you going? I need you to answer the phone. Bennett is trying to patch in the board." "I'm not answering the phone, Arthur," Veronica said. She didn't look angry, she looked done. "I'm going to my sister's in Aspen, and then I'm going to meet with my divorce lawyer." Arthur stood up, swaying slightly. "Divorce? Now? You can't leave me now. I'm under siege. We have to present a united front." "There is no we anymore," Veronica said, pulling a folded newspaper from under her arm and tossing it on the desk. "I can handle the affairs, Arthur. I can handle the coldness, but I cannot handle the humiliation. I can't show my face at the club. My friends are blocking my number. You have become a pariah, and you're taking the ship down." "I'm the victim," Arthur shouted, slamming his hand on the desk. "She set me up. She baited me. She sat in a chair and read a book," Veronica said coldly. "Goodbye, Arthur. Don't fight the prenup. You won't be able to afford the legal fees anyway." She closed the door. The click of the latch echoed like a gunshot. 10 minutes later, the computer screen on his desk lit up. It was the video conference link for the board meeting. Arthur sat down, smoothed his hair, and clicked join. 12 faces appeared on the screen. Men and women he had known for decades. Men he had played golf with. Women whose children's tuitions he had recommended. None of them were smiling. The chairman of the board, a man named Jonathan Pierce, spoke first. Jonathan was Arthur's godfather. He was supposed to be his protector. "Arthur," Jonathan said. His voice was tinny through the speakers. "Jonathan," Arthur said, trying to project confidence. "Look, before we start, I have a strategy. We countersue for defamation. We claim the video was doctored. We launch a PR blitz focusing on my charity work. We can weather this." "Arthur, stop," Jonathan said. "We just need to buy time," Arthur continued, ignoring him. "I can fly to London next week. Smooth things over with." "Arthur," Jonathan shouted. Arthur fell silent. "There is no countersuit," Jonathan said, looking down at a paper on his desk. "We have received a communication from Meridian Holdings' legal team. They have threatened to pull all shipping contracts with Harrington Logistics if you remain in any executive capacity. That is 60% of our revenue, Arthur. 60%. Arthur went pale. Noelle Kalu wasn't just satisfied with the plane incident. She was systematically dismantling his business. "Furthermore," Jonathan continued, 3 major banks have called in our credit lines. They cited a reputational risk clause. We are insolvent within 90 days if we don't act." "So, what are you saying?" Arthur whispered. "We have voted, Arthur. Unanimously. You can't vote without me. I have the supervoting shares. We invoked the morals clause in your contract," Jonathan said. "Section 4, paragraph B, conduct bringing the company into disrepute. It nullifies your voting rights immediately." Arthur felt like he couldn't breathe. The morals clause. He had put that in there to fire lower-level executives who got DUIs. He never thought it would be used on him. "You are terminated as CEO, effective immediately," Jonathan said. "You are removed from the board. Security has been instructed to deactivate your pass cards. Do not come to the building. We will courier your personal effects to your residence." "You can't do this to me," Arthur screamed at the screen. "I built this company. My father built this company. And you destroyed it in 5 minutes because you couldn't handle sitting behind a black woman, a female board member, one he had hired," said sharply. "It's over, Arthur." "Wait," Arthur pleaded. "Please. I have nothing else. This company is my life." "You should have thought of that before you opened your mouth," Jonathan said. "Goodbye, Arthur." The screen went black. Arthur sat in the silence of his empty apartment. No job, no wife, no reputation. His phone buzzed. He looked at it, hoping for a lifeline. It was a notification from his banking app. "Alert. Joint account ending in 4,490 has been frozen pending divorce litigation. He let the phone drop from his hand. He needed a drink. But he also needed to get away. He couldn't stay in New York. He would go to his beach house in the Hamptons. He would hide there until this blew over. He opened his laptop to book a flight. He couldn't fly the airline he had just been kicked off of, obviously. But there were others. He went to a competitor's site. He entered his details. He clicked Purchase. Error. Transaction declined. He tried another card. Error. Transaction declined. He tried a third site. This time, a message popped up in red text. Passenger name flagged. No fly list. Arthur stared at the screen. It wasn't just Dr. Kalu's airline. The industry shared security lists. He had been marked as a level 2 threat, abusive toward crew. He was blacklisted. He couldn't fly. He couldn't run. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. It was raining. The gray sky matched his soul. He had spent his whole life looking down on people, thinking he was untouchable in his tower. Now, he was just another man in a room, trapped by the walls he had built himself. But the hardest blow was yet to come. The final twist of the knife that would ensure Arthur Harrington would never be forgotten, but not in the way he wanted. 8 months in the financial world is a lifetime. It is enough time for a stock to crash, a legacy to dissolve, and a man to be completely erased. Arthur Harrington stood in the freezing drizzle outside a garage in Jersey City. The bespoke Savile Row suits were long gone, auctioned off to pay for his divorce defense. The Patek Philippe watch had been seized by the IRS. Now, Arthur wore a polyester suit that was a size too large, purchased off the rack at a discount outlet. It scratched at his neck, a constant, irritating reminder of his new reality. He was no longer the CEO of Harrington Logistics. That entity didn't even exist anymore. After the viral boycott and the withdrawal of bank support, the company had been picked apart by vultures. Arthur had walked away with nothing but debt and a reputation so toxic that even mid-level consulting firms blocked his email address. He checked his reflection in the side mirror of the black Lincoln Town car. His face was gaunt, his eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. He was no longer Arthur Harrington, the tycoon. He was driver 402 for Prestige Limousine. "Hey, 402, the dispatcher yelled from the booth. "Stop admiring yourself. You got a VIP pickup at Teterboro. Don't mess this up." The client requested a quiet driver. Arthur winced at the number. He didn't have a name here. He slid into the driver's seat, which smelled faintly of stale pine and cigarettes, a far cry from the bergamot scent of the first-class lounge. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. This was his life now, serving the people he used to rule. He arrived at Teterboro Airport, the hub for private jets serving New York City. He knew this tarmac well. He used to park his own Bombardier Global Express here. Now he sat in the holding lot with the other livery drivers, drinking lukewarm coffee from a styrofoam cup. His phone pinged. Flight landed. Proceed to FBO entrance. Arthur pulled the car around. A sleek, massive Gulfstream G650 was taxiing to a halt. It was a magnificent machine, painted in a deep, midnight blue with gold accents. Arthur felt a pang of jealousy so sharp it almost doubled him over. The FBO staff rolled out a red carpet. This was a client of serious status. He got out of the car, pulling the bill of his chauffeur's cap low. The last thing he wanted was to be recognized by a former peer. He heard the click of heels on the tarmac. Then, a voice that stopped his heart. "Careful with that box, please. It contains prototypes." Arthur froze. The blood in his veins turned to ice. He knew that voice. It was low, commanding, and had haunted his nightmares for 8 months. He slowly looked up. Standing at the bottom of the stairs, shielded by an umbrella held by a pilot, was Dr. Noelle Kalu. She looked even more radiant than she had on the plane. She wore a trench coat that likely cost more than Arthur's entire year's earnings at the limo service. She was typing on her phone, looking busy, powerful, and utterly unbothered by the rain. Arthur's instinct was to run, to jump in the car and speed away, but he couldn't. He was 2 weeks behind on rent for his studio apartment. If he walked away from this fare, he was on the street. He forced his legs to move. He walked toward the pile of Louis Vuitton luggage stacked on the tarmac, the same brand he had once tried to throw into the aisle. "Driver, Noelle said, not looking up from her phone. The blue bag goes in the front seat with me. The rest in the trunk. Yes, ma'am, Arthur mumbled, pitching his voice as low as possible to mask the tremor. He loaded the heavy bags into the trunk, the rain soaking through his cheap suit. He felt the weight of every bad decision he had ever made pressing down on him. He walked around to open the rear passenger door. Noelle finished her text and stepped toward the car. As she ducked her head to enter, she paused. She looked at the hand holding the door open. She looked at the cheap, scuffed cufflinks. Then, her eyes traveled up the arm, past the polyester shoulder, to the face beneath the cap. Arthur held his breath, staring at his own shoes. Please don't see me. Noelle's eyes narrowed slightly. A flicker of recognition passed through them, a spark of surprise, followed immediately by a look of profound, crushing pity. She didn't scream. She didn't mock him. She simply looked at him for 3 long seconds, stripping him bare of whatever dignity he had left. To the Meridian Tower in Manhattan, she said softly. Yes, ma'am, Arthur whispered. He closed the door and scrambled into the driver's seat. His hands were shaking so badly he had to grip the wheel to steady them. He pulled out of the airport and merged onto the highway. The partition glass was down. He could hear her talking on her phone. Yes, the acquisition is complete, Noelle was saying. We picked up the remaining logistics infrastructure this morning. It was a steal, really. The previous management ran it into the ground. Arthur's stomach churned. She was talking about his company. She had bought the scraps of his empire. We're going to rebrand it, Noelle continued. Clean slate. We're rehiring the warehouse staff that the previous CEO fired. We're raising the minimum wage. It's amazing how profitable a company can be when you treat people with dignity. Arthur stared at the road, tears blurring his vision. She wasn't just winning, she was fixing his mistakes, and she was making money doing it. She was proving that his entire worldview, his belief that ruthlessness was necessary for success, was a lie. They hit gridlock near the George Washington Bridge. The car came to a standstill. The silence in the car was suffocating. Driver, Noelle said. Arthur jumped. Yes, ma'am? Do you enjoy your job? Arthur looked at her in the rearview mirror. She was looking right at his reflection, her expression unreadable. It pays the bills, ma'am, Arthur said, his voice cracking. It's honest work, Noelle said. There is no shame in service. There is only shame in thinking you are too good for it. Arthur swallowed hard. Yes, ma'am. I recall a man, Noelle said, looking out the window at the gray skyline. He thought the world owed him a seat at the front. He ended up with nothing. I wonder if he understands why. Arthur gripped the wheel until his knuckles hurt. He wanted to scream that he understood, that he was sorry, but the lump in his throat was too large. I hope he does, Noelle said, turning back to her papers. Because the world is a very small place, and what goes around eventually comes around to pick you up. She knew. She had known the moment she saw him at the airport. She had let him drive her, let him load her bags, let him listen to her success, all to teach him one final lesson. The rest of the drive was silent. When they arrived at the gleaming glass tower that housed her headquarters, a building Arthur had once visited as a peer, he pulled up to the curb. The doorman rushed to open the back door. Noelle stepped out. Arthur got out to open the trunk. He unloaded the bags, placing them on the wet sidewalk. He felt small. He felt invisible. Noelle turned to him. She reached into her purse and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. She held it out. Arthur looked at the money. It was a tip. A tip from the woman he had tried to humiliate. Take it, Noelle said. You worked for it. Arthur reached out and took the bill. His fingers brushed hers. Thank you, Dr. Kalu, he whispered, head bowed. Drive safe, Mr. Harrington, she said coolly. And try to be kind. It costs nothing, but it pays everything. She turned and walked into the building, her heels clicking on the marble floor, the automatic doors sliding shut behind her. Arthur stood on the sidewalk, clutching the $100 bill. The rain mixed with the tears on his face. He was alone in the city he used to own, holding a tip from the woman who had bested him. He looked up at the skyscraper reflecting the clouds and realized he hadn't just lost his money. He had lost his soul a long time ago, and it had taken losing everything else to finally find it, there on the wet pavement, in the form of a bill handed to him with grace he didn't deserve. Arthur got back into the car, put on his blinker, and merged back into traffic, just another anonymous face in the endless stream of lights. Arthur Harrington's journey from the first-class suite to the driver's seat of a rental limo is a stark reminder that in the modern world, character is the only currency that doesn't devalue. He thought his status gave him the right to belittle others, but he learned the hard way that true power lies in dignity, respect, and humility. Dr. Noelle Kalou didn't just defeat him with her wealth. She defeated him with her class, proving that no matter how high you fly, you are never too important to be kind, and you are certainly never too big to fall. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please give this video a like. It really helps the channel grow and reach more people. Don't forget to share this with a friend who needs a reminder to treat everyone with respect, and hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Question for the comments. Have you ever witnessed a "do you know who I am" moment backfire in real life? Tell me your story down below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.